Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. You can go to only so many places. When I went to Israel about 25 years ago, I was there for about 10 days, and so with limited time and countless sites to visit, choices had to be made about what we saw and what we missed. The thing is, the more I study the Bible and learn these Bible stories and their meaning, I keep encountering places I would have liked to have seen, but didn't get to see. For example, yesterday we talked about Hebron, and that was a place we did not go to. Another place we didn't go was Shechem, and frankly, that has never really bothered me too much, at least not until today. You see, I really didn't know the importance of Shechem before now. Now that I do, all I can say is, wow. This week and next week, we are looking at what I am calling sacred geography, places mentioned in the Bible where the lay of the land, the location itself, contributes to the meaning of what happened there. What I have learned is that Shechem is a pretty important place, and the geography preaches a sermon all by itself. Actually, there were several key events that happened in the history of Israel at Shechem. It's hard to overestimate the importance of the very first. The pioneer of faith in God was Abraham, an old, childless man who dared to answer God's call to leave his homeland and to go off to a land far away from all that he had ever known. I'm amazed that God didn't even seem to give Abraham directions or much of any guidance at all. Basically, God tells him, head out. And when you get where you're supposed to be, I'll tell you to stop. Well, that's what he did. And then in Genesis 12, the Bible tells us that Abraham came to the land of Canaan, and there were Canaanites already living in the land. He stopped by an oak tree at a place called Shechem, and there God made a promise to Abraham. To your offspring I will give this land. And Abraham built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So interestingly enough, Shechem is the first place in the Promised Land where God is worshipped. Wow. But that's not the only time Shechem appears, however. Later on in Genesis, Jacob is moving his household and understands it as a time for them to rededicate themselves to God. And he tells all his household to remove all their foreign gods from their possession. And then Jacob buries them at Shechem. Later, at the end of Joshua, after the people have conquered the promised land and made it their own, Joshua calls all the people together at Shechem and invites them to rededicate themselves to following God in God's way. Choose this day whom you will serve, he tells them. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The fact that all this was happening at Shechem was no accident. Shechem is in large ways a place that invites stark choices. As a place, Shechem sits exactly between two mountains. Mount Gerizim is on one side, and it is lush and green. Mount Ebal is across from it, stark and rocky. Between them is a valley that acts like a natural amphitheater called Shechem. Gathered at Shechem, the choices are laid out before you. Lush promise on one side versus barren rock on the other. This is all clearly seen in a long story in Deuteronomy 27 and 28. Moses brought the people there and then invited the leaders of half of the tribes to stand on the fertile slopes of Mount Gerizim, the mountain of blessing. From this greener, life-filled slope, they proclaim the blessings that come from walking faithfully with God. fruitfulness, victory, abundance, God's favor, and stability in the land. The physical environment reinforces the message. Obedience leads to life, flourishing, and blessing. The other half of the tribe stand on Mount Ebal, the mountain of cursing. From this barren, stony mountain, they proclaim the consequences of being unfaithful to the covenant: defeat, exile, loss, and hardness of life. Again, the land preaches. Disobedience leads to barrenness, brokenness, and death. This moment is not just spoken, it is performed. The people stand between the two mountains, hearing blessing echo from one side and curses from the other. The valley becomes a natural theater where the covenant is enacted in stereo. It is as if God says, choose which mountain you want your life to resemble. The physical contrast makes the spiritual choice unavoidable. Far too often we choose poorly, seeking our own whims and desires rather than following the way of God. Throughout the Bible, Shechem stands as a reminder and a call for us to commit ourselves and our lives to faithfulness. The very land itself, with the two mountains so dramatically different, illustrate our all too familiar spiritual dilemma. God has chosen. God has chosen blessing and grace for us. Now choose this day whom you will serve. With Abraham, with Joshua, serve the Lord. Thanks for sharing these moments with me, and remember to let this day belong to God.